Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome back to day 2 of the 30-day journey into sound. Wow, that sounds profound. But it's really simple. It's a very ancient process of meditation. You know, back in the day, they would meditate to mantras. Mantras are an utterance of sound. For example, you have the mantra Om, spelled A-U-M or O-M or whatever you prefer. And when you would speak or utter the mantra, for example, Om, the idea is that you're focusing on the sound and you become absorbed in the sound. Now, wait a second, Rob. Absorption sounds a little scary, and I know. There's really 2 components to this meditation for it to be successful. The first one is something we talk about all the time, and that is redirecting your attention to the music. The second part is the dissolution of self. Now, for some, that's the scary part, because I don't want to lose myself because I might not get myself back. Well, that's a valid concern. Obviously, you're important, right? We wouldn't want to lose yourself and never get yourself back. But this is what's referred to as the leap of faith in many traditions, in the idea of the ego death. And what is the ego? Without getting too far into philosophical debate, the ego, very simply, is the idea of self, the idea of a separate self from all of existence, of all of creation, in simplified terms. Sure, there's the Jungian psychological definition of the ego, but the idea in a spiritual sense is that it's not about egotism, or that I think I'm great, or, you know, the typical egotistical definition of someone who's self-centered or whatever. The ego is a very simple concept, and this is why we often miss it. And this is why a lot of times people are like, oh no, a lot of New Agers out there. No, don't lose the ego. You want to nurture the ego. You want to... It all depends on what you're into. Now, I'm into discovering the truth and the divinity of life. And in those terms, what the ego is simply the idea of self. The ego, in the way that I'm describing it, is this idea of a separate self. So, for example, when we're meditating to the music, and you initially put your attention on the music, there's a sense of, I am listening to the music. You might not be thinking that, but there's this subtle sense, perceptually, that there is a separate listener, viewer, observer, whatever that might be. And so, as long as there is a separation of subject and object, we are in a sense in duality. Now, there's nothing wrong with duality, folks. If that's what you're into, go for it. And duality can be fun sometimes, too. Me and you and me. But in reality, there's only one. I hate to tell you this, my friends, but it's the truth. In reality, there is only one of us here. Now, we see all... How can that be, Rob? I see you, you see me, there's a TV screen or a phone in between us. And that's true. There's what's called the illusion, the delusion of the senses. The idea, and this is even talked about in modern physics, is that the idea of the quantum soup, and that nothing really appears to be until there is an observer. It's like the old adage, when a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? And you might say, well, of course it makes a sound. I've been told it makes a sound. It made a sound when I was in the forest last time, and of course it makes a sound if we're not there. Ah, but does it? And these little koans, these little ways of contemplating our reality should bring us to a realization, is that we don't know anything. We are truly in ignorance. Most of us go around, and me included, just repeating what we've heard. Just, what a great teacher once called mumming, like a mummery. The idea is that we're just kind of going along with the plan. Now, without getting too far off on a tangent here, what does this have to do with ego? Well, the way that I define ego is that it's a separation from reality. And in meditation, we want to experience reality. Now, reality is simply a word. My advice to you is not to get caught up in the words too much. Listen to the words as pointers, as guides, that we're pointing towards something. We're pointing towards something that's very difficult to describe in words. The transcendental experience that can be had within meditation. Sure, there are roads, there are pathways, but at a certain point, the path ends, and there's no more road, and there's no more path, there's no more technique, and we just have to be. And in that realm, there can be no other. There can be no ego. And as I said earlier, what I'm referring to as ego is the observer, or the subject and the object orientation. When you have this duality of an observer and the observed, or a subject and an object, you will constantly, no matter what dimension you're in, you will constantly feel a separation from the object, from the room, from the other. In the highest states of meditation, there is no other. There is no separation, there's no difference. There's not even a you. How can there be a you when there's only one? Dun dun dun! Okay, my friends. So, getting back to the point here, I know you're eager to get to the meditation here. It is 12 noon, it's day 2. What we're trying to do here is 2 things really with the music. First off, we're trying to uninterruptedly focus on the music only. This is the process of concentration. Now, forget about what you've heard about concentration. I believe it's an essential and integral part of the meditation practice. Concentration precedes meditation. Meaning, initially, what we're dealing with here is a mind that is a mess. It's a scatterbrain. It's an attention fleeting mind. Your attention is all over the place, wandering all over, meandering, going hither and yon, doing what it will. And hey, if that's what you're happy with, no problem at all. What meditation is here and designed to do is to get you out of that limited state of mind and into a greater, higher consciousness. So how do you do that? We have to get that noise, we have to get that activity to come to rest. And so we bring that attention that is scattered amongst all the thoughts. Imagine as if your attention is fragmented into a million pieces. Normally the attention, or the awareness, or your consciousness is in a state of whole. It's in a state of one. In a state of whole. That doesn't sound too good. It's in a state of wholeness. So wholesome. And for whatever reason, due to our conditioning in this life, in this world, this awareness is fragmented into a million pieces. It's fragmented behind our identity. Oh yes, I see I have an identity. I see I have a name. I see I have the thought. I see I have an idea. I have a blah, 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 blah. A million ideas, a million thoughts, a million memories. And so what we seek to do in the early stages of meditation is to bring that awareness into one single focus so that it's not broken, it's not scattered, it's not shattered. Does that make sense? I hope so, because this is the first step. When we can bring our attention to the music in this particular technique, what we're doing is we are removing our attention, the fragmented pieces, and bringing it into a whole singular focus. And then trying to hold it there for a prolonged period of time. So that's step one. Now, what happens during this process, of course we all know, is that the mind tends to wander. The mind tends to wander because of the tendencies that it has, because these are habits that it's formed. It's starting to make sense now. So if I just train my mind like an elite athlete would train their body to perform a particular task, does that mean I can get better, get stronger, improve my concentration ability, and not have such a scattered mind all the time? Maybe. Depends how hard you work in your meditation, because it is a workout. Hey, Harmony says, we are one consciousness, subject and object, mind, body, world, temporary. Yes. Enlightened advice from Harmony. I love it. Very nice, very nice, very good. Glad to have you on. And so that's step one, is returning our attention back to one thing. And when the attention wanders back to its habitual tendencies of wanting to think, wanting to imagine, wanting to remember, wanting to project, wanting to worry, whatever it might be, we simply return it back to the object of focus, which in this case is the music. And the music is a very easy way to do this, because music is a continuous stream of awareness. And you don't have to do anything. The music is just playing. So this is a very similar concept to all basic meditation techniques. The idea of using something as a singular focus, similar to using the breath, similar to using a mantra and focusing on the mantra, similar to using a yantra, one of my favorite methods, and using the eyes to focus on a yantra, etc., etc. You get the idea. Now the second, and perhaps even more important part of this, but you can't have the second part until you get the first part, right? So we're showing you the steps here. The second part is once you've been able to isolate your attention and hold it there, fairly steadily on the music, in this case, the second part is that you're going to begin a slow dissolution process, a slow process of dissolving that separate self until there is an eventual merger and merging of the subject and the object, of the observer and the observed, into one. And this is the true meaning of the word yoga. Yoga is not just doing some asanas or postures. That's typically what we think of when we hear of yoga. If you're new to this whole thing, we think yoga is yoga pants, which, I'm a big fan of. Not wearing them myself, but you get the idea. Or yoga is just going to class, doing the physical postures, downward dog, sun salutations. That is just one little segment of the full spectrum. Now, without getting too off track here, the word yoga means union. Union with the divine. Union with the infinite. It actually means to join, to come together. So the idea is that within the process of this one meditation session, you can go through the full process of yoga. That's really the idea. That's the way that I like to teach. That's the way that I like to show you how to meditate. Is that within this one session, we're going through basically almost all the moves. Now, of course, there are some preliminary processes to the full path and spectrum of quote-unquote yoga. And there is a great book out there that I recommend called, write this down, The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Now, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is a classic text on the full spectrum and process of becoming enlightened. What is the process of yoga designed to do? It's to take us from that lump of coal and to transmute it into that shining gold. And this process of alchemy, this process of transmutation, this process of transformation is one of the major reasons why we do meditation. So, when we sit for your meditation session, it's very important to have a proper posture so that not only is there a proper energy flow, because there could be a spontaneous upward energy flow. And now, I like to sit in a chair. When I sit in the chair, I keep my back straight, just like this. Now, I like sitting in a chair because for me, it's a little bit uncomfortable to sit cross-legged on the floor for too long. You know, my hips, my knees start to ache, and then all you're thinking about is your hips and your knees. So it's important to be very comfortable while you meditate, but I don't recommend lying down. Now, I know you've heard that lying down is okay and acceptable for meditation, and if you have an extreme medical problem where you simply cannot sit up straight, then yes, obviously, if that's the last resort that you have, lying down is perfectly acceptable in those cases. But I don't recommend lying down if you can sit up, because you just tend to get too sleepy. And meditation, whether you've heard on the contrary, perhaps, meditation is not about relaxation. Now, certainly there's a certain degree of relaxation that needs to take place, because for a certain amount of flow to occur, there needs to be a certain amount of relaxation versus resistance. It's like electrical flow. If there's too much resistance, no electricity will get through. If there's, or perhaps music is a better analogy, and I believe that this was one of good old Siddhartha's analogies, is that if you tune a string, let's say on a guitar, if you tune a string too tight, it'll snap and break. If you leave the string too loose, blah, 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 it won't create that beautiful, perfect music, that frequency. But if you have just the right amount of tension, balanced with relaxation, bing, you get beautiful music. And so this is sort of the concept I like to bring to how we should hold our bodies, is that there should be just enough tension in the muscles to hold a good posture, but just enough muscular and energetic relaxation to allow for energy flow. Hopefully that makes sense. So, step number one is to sit up straight and to have a good posture. Now, it's very important to move away from your bodily consciousness as soon as possible. So what does that mean? It means that due to attachment, due to our habits and tendencies, we tend to focus on our bodies. We tend to focus on ourselves. We tend to, want to check in with ourselves all the time, because this is just a habit that we have. It's sort of this self-originated narcissus ego sense that we kind of have to always be, looking out of a body, looking out through our eyes, experiencing life through one of the five senses, whatever that may be. So one of the things that you'll notice when you sit down to meditate is that you'll all of a sudden notice that you're looking through your eyes, meaning like the energy, you're holding your attention, rather, in the same pattern as you would watching TV or watching your phone. Is that we are so used to the process of using our eyes within the everyday waking state that our attention has become habituated to that process. It's become a habit, it's become a tendency. So remember, we are here to break out of those tendencies, those automaticities, those habits of our attention being attached to certain areas, whether they're attached to thinking, whether your attention is attached to your senses, perhaps you're attached to all sorts of different things. And so this is one of the first things that we will recognize when we try to sit still, because sitting still is a discipline in and of itself. And this is part of the asana, this is part of the posture, this is part of the physical aspect of meditation, is first being able to sit still. Now, I have no problem with adjusting, with breathing, with kind of, moving around, maybe within the first few minutes or so of the meditation, because initially you'll discover perhaps degrees of muscular tension that you were not aware of before. So when you first sit down to meditate and you close your eyes and you're trying to listen to the music in this case, you'll begin to notice, oh wow, I'm holding a lot of tension around my heart, or I'm holding a lot of tension around my face, or whatever. And so this is important to be aware of it, but then just let it go. This is part of the dissolving process. This is part of the dissolution. Initially, we have to dissolve the tension, the physical tension. Okay? So, the second aspect of the dissolving process is that we need to dissolve the energetic tendencies. And these feel like tensions. Now, here's a good example. If I take my hand and I make a fist, you can see that there's tension within my fist. It's closed. Okay? And now if I open up, and now you see that there's an open hand without tension, and there's an energy flow, for example. So very similarly, we have these tight fists in our body. We have these tight fists in our aura. These energetic contractions are there due to the fact of putting up our guard, protecting ourselves. Part of living in this world and dealing with a lot of difference in energies and dealing with a lot of environmental aggression or early childhood trauma or whatever it might be, we've developed these guards, these shields. We tense up. It's like, imagine someone's throwing a punch at your gut. Well, what are you going to do? Are you just going to go, punch me, please? No, you're gonna brace. Now, bracing is a form of guard. It's like putting up a shield. Ching! So what happens is that we go around this world, whether we're driving in our car, whether we're dealing with someone that doesn't necessarily have the most friendly energy, perhaps, and we kind of put up an energetic shield. We kind of block the energy. And this is just an instinct that we have. But this is one of the things that needs to be transcended within the meditation. Because these energetic blocks, and this isn't talked about a lot within a lot of meditation circles. So I'm glad I'm here talking to you about it today. Because a lot of times people will describe the focus process, the concentration process, and it seems meditation seems to be such a mental sport. But there's really more than this. It's mental and it's energetic. Without the energetic part, without the part of feeling, it's incomplete. It's only half. Okay? So there's a lot of people that, profess to be enlightened, and they're just merely intellectualizing. They've read a good book, they kind of know some concepts, but there's all sorts of feeling contraction within their feeling body. They can't feel love. And isn't that what it's all about, my friend here? It's about feeling love, because we know intuitively that love is the feeling of oneness. Is that when we feel love, whether it's for another human being, whether it's for an animal, or whether it's just a love for life or a love for all of life, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, love is a bridge that unites. It's that feeling that overcomes the separation. So this is what we're aiming for, is a feeling. So in order to have a feeling, you might notice initially that I can't feel a thing. I'm so numb from all the experiences of life that I'm so blocked up energetically and emotionally that you may not be able to feel anything beyond the body. But just having this awareness, just having this epiphany, just having this understanding of yourself is a good step toward progress, so that eventually you can begin to let go of these energetic contractions. You can begin to let go and surrender. Now, what are we surrendering to? In this case, you're surrendering to love. You're surrendering to the music. Because the music is our object of focus. What we seek to do is to initially put our attention on the music and then merge with the music. And the merging will be a process. It may not happen all at once, but you may get a glimpse, and then you'll just notice that, oh, I'm focusing only on the music, and that bounces back to a subject-object orientation. And then you'll focus again on the music, and you'll kind of combine again to where only the music exists. And there may be a very subtle sense of separation, but that's okay. You know, we can't all become enlightened in one day. But gradually you'll learn to do this process of, you know, coming together with the object of focus, in this case the music, merging slowly, you know, maybe coming apart, realizing, and then coming back again. Maybe being able to merge and hold that merge state. Even if there's a subtle sense of self, that's okay. But eventually, you'll just be, there won't be a you. There'll just be the music playing. And you won't even worry. It's just a beautiful experience. And this is the experience of meditation. When we go beyond the self. When we go beyond this sense of separate self. We go beyond the ego. And so this is the goal. Now, without further ado, I know I've blabbed on forever here. We're going to get to the music. What I recommend is using a set of headphones so you can get a undistracted, clear sound coming through. Whether you're on your phone, whether you're on a tablet, a laptop, a TV, I don't know. So there could be varying degrees of sound quality coming through. So the best way to maximize that sound quality, whether you're on your phone or whatever it might be, is just to plug in your headphones or put on your wireless headphones and listen that way. And I think you'll have a much deeper, intimate experience when the music is literally right there in your head. It might be easier for you. So, the process is one of learning. As we go through the process, don't expect to get it all in one day, or if you don't have the greatest experience the first time, that's okay. This is only day 2. What I recommend is committing yourself to the daily practice. I'm coming on here twice a day. We're doing a 20-25 minute meditation to the music. Initially, this is what may happen, is that for the first song or two, you'll kind of just be settling in. You'll kind of just be settling down. You'll kind of notice that, yes, I can focus on the music. I've got that part, but then my mind will wander, my attention will wander, and this is totally normal. You're simply initially trying to bring the attention back to the music and just listen to the music and kind of hold that as long as you can. When the attention wanders, you keep bringing it back. Even if it just wanders for a second, you bring it back. And then eventually what you're doing is you're slowly dissolving into the music and using the music as the backdrop. Not the backdrop like we typically would use meditation music. The music should not be ignored. The music is the distraction to get us out of the monkey mind, to get us away from the scattered attention. So using the music as the object of focus, the music becomes your entire world. In fact, the music is a world. The music holds a particular frequency that when you tune into it, you will be brought up very high. So I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Let's see, let me attach to my Bluetooth. I use a Bluetooth speaker. Make sure I'm still on here. Of course it turned off. Here we go. Okay, so begin by sitting up straight. Maintain a good posture. Take a few deep breaths to begin. And once we get rolling, just allow your breath to happen naturally. You don't need to focus on the breath. But there will be a few moments when you'll be listening to the music And then you'll want to take a breath to sort of relax the physical or energetic tensions that come up. That's okay. Just return your attention to the music each time. First song or two, we're just settling down. Just listen to the music deeply. Well, well. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. You know, sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes it's a challenge to sit still and focus on something. Sometimes your whole being, or maybe your ass, is screaming, "Oh, move! Let's forget this. Let's stop. When's it going to be over?" But when you redirect your attention back to the music during those times, you're developing a strength, an inner strength, a willpower that will be evident in your life. This is the training of how you'll react to difficult situations in life. This is why stretching yourself, going beyond just slightly the comfortability zone, going beyond that comfort zone each day, whether it be challenging yourself to sit perfectly still during the whole meditation for 20, 25, 30 minutes, whether it be focusing on the music and really trying to hold your attention there and not let your mind wander. All of these little efforts that we make carry over into our lives. And that moment that we're sitting in traffic and the traffic's not moving and it's backed up for miles because there's an accident way down the road. Instead of getting frustrated, you'll just automatically notice that you relax and you surrender to the moment. And the moment isn't so bad. And so this is the whole process, that meditation is a transformation process. It is an alchemical process. It transforms and transmutes the gross personality into a more subtle, more refined being, so that we live in higher, more subtle, more refined states of consciousness. Little by little, progress is made over time. Each day that you take the time to sit down and meditate, you're becoming a stronger person. You're becoming a freer person. You're becoming a happier person. You're becoming someone who's more flexible, someone who's more resilient to the myriad changes that could take place in life. And so for this, I commend you, my friend, and thank you very much for sitting with me today. And I'll be back tonight around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the next meditation. So we'll see you then. Have a good day.